Hey there, Terrible Warriors. Welcome back. We've just finished playing Ross Rifles with Pat and Daniel from Dundas West Games. Their game is currently in Kickstarter. Follow through to the episode description where you'll find a link to that campaign and get involved and help make this game the reality we all want it to be. And it was for you. You've been listening to us over the course of like 2.5 weeks. For us, it's all happened in one day. So Alex and I have just finished playing Ross Rifles. How did you enjoy it, Alex? Because you were coming in quite cold. I was just like, come on down.
Can you come down this weekend?
I need
this upcoming weekend? Sure.
Sure.
And
I bribed you with pizza and wrestling.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's actually the truth.
That is correct. And I was like, I will find a way out here. And then it went better than expected. I was worried that... See, my fear when trying a new game system, because I'm probably the least experienced when it comes to playing different systems in the first place. I don't think I've ever played a Powered by the Apocalypse.
What? I didn't know that.
Really?
I would have made a bigger deal about that in the first episode.
As we were playing it, I'm like, I've never played this.
Okay, well, let's roll back. How was it like playing a Powered by the Apocalypse game?
That's
because
very
now
different.
You got this story mode.
I've played the very narrative, like the Fate systems, and then I've played D&D, and I've played this is sort of an
Shadowrun.
Yeah, Shadowrun.
Let's just take a sigh.
I love the Shadowrun campaign. I don't like the math, and I'm not a super anti-math person. It's just there's a lot there that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
But I did find this is like a comfortable medium in between. There's enough narrative, and you had said that there weren't really ways initially to die, I guess, in the system, but they've made ways to die in the system.
It depends on the Powered by Apocalypse game that you're playing and the buy-in that you're getting. I have found most Powered by the Apocalypse games don't put death on the table as a stake.
Oh, okay.
Because that's just not the story they're trying to tell, right? The teenager superheroes in masks are just not going to die. They're going to get stressed out and they're going to deal with those consequences. And even Tales from the Loop, the kids, it's not Powered by the Apocalypse. That's also another example of a game where your characters are not going to die. If you want to play that, there's
Things
a sequel.
from the Flood.
Things from the Flood, where that can happen. But there's most Powered by even games like Monster Hearts and that, where your characters could die, they're more likely to go to their darkest selves and deal with the consequences of their actions and come back into it. But those are just not the stories they're telling, right? So there are some of these PBTA games I've got where your characters can. I just find that even when they can, the focus tends to be more on conditions, like what we had with stress in this game, of consequences that are happening to your characters over time and just spending time with them. And if they end up becoming untenable as a player character, they might not be dead, but they become an NPC. Like in Masks, you might end up just taking on so many conditions and just not getting along with anyone on your team that you just choose to quit the team. If you quit the team, you're making a new character, right? That character has now become an NPC and they've left. Same deal though, if you advance far enough that you become an adult, your character is now over and retired, is become an adult. You don't play adults in that game, so you're going to make a new player character. And it's just Powered by the Apocalypse games I have found, talking with Daniel, also talking with Brendan Conway from Root, the last game we played, are real good at being games that spotlight on a very specific story. And that spotlight isn't going to move around. This is what it's going to do, and this is what it's not going to do. And if you can buy into that, you're going to have a real good time. If you try to play Bluebeard's Bride, where it's all about escaping the house, well, that's a different game, and it's not going to work for you. And you're going to feel like you're constantly fighting the game, whereas you kind of want to and the rules and what is the story that the designer is trying to present to you.
Well, this is the first game I played where somebody died, but it wasn't a party wipe.
Mm-hmm.
Either every game I've played before, we've either party wiped or everybody's fine.
Maybe died.
Maybe died. Like, question mark.
Maybe died.
I accepted it, but I never checked off killed in action.
Very true. Okay, fair enough there. Like I said, when I start a new game or a new game system, the worry is how hard is it going to be to get into the world or into the game and understand the rules. The rules were easy to follow. And this is probably the fastest and most natural game I've been a part of where we came up with the backstories and the characters. Like it was over a longer period of time than we sometimes would do, because we got so into making the characters.
Significantly longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you could crank out 4 characters in Ross Rifles in 20 minutes if you wanted to really just ding, 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 check, answer, bond, you're
Get
there.
into the war.
Yeah.
That said, I had a really great time with character creation, and we just chewed it out for a little longer because we were like, oh, and we just start. But I do that in every.
But
time I do
you know what? I almost found.
I think I spent 2 hours making characters and masks for the same reasons, because you just start and then it just becomes part of the play.
And it's not to say like I liked one aspect more than the other. I just think that the character building in here was the most satisfying I've had playing any of the games on Terrible Warriors, because once these characters are built, now we can throw them into anything. Now we could push the reset button and another time keep these characters and start a new story entirely.
Stats are going to be important with
But the
challenges
relationships.
and figuring out. But what I really want to know is not just what are my characters' statistics, but why is my character here and with you and in this place, and how did they get there? And these are questions that you want to ask yourself when you're playing any game, but are not questions that are required of you when you're playing something like Dungeons and Dragons or just traditional games, or even games like Star Trek Adventures. It's part of the creation if you want to ask those leading questions from the GM side, but the onus isn't really presented to the player by default. Whereas a lot of Powered by Apocalypse games have really embraced questions like the bonds we did here, where it's going to help you create that connected tissue. But then also, like if you're Alex, like not an improviser and haven't been part of collective storytelling and feeling like, oh man, I just want to roll dice to see if I hit the bad guy. And it really, this also I find is going to help you give prompts. I don't know what to do, but Ben Williams and I often butt heads when strategizing. So whatever he's going to come up with, I'm just going to devil's advocate with it. And that's going to give me something.
And then to get out of it, let's flip a coin.
Yeah.
But when you said flip a coin, it went right into the narrative.
Yeah, and then the coin flipped heads, and we're in the dirt, and it's just like cut to the plan.
But then it went to, when you said flip a coin, you're like, okay, I'll roll a die. It was very meta, and then you were like, well, you know what? This is a part of my character now. I'm like, I don't want the responsibility of losing people, so my character chalks it up to luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just snowballed into itself.
Yeah, and then so your character like evolved over the course of our like 4 hours.
And you rolled the dice on our lives, and look what happened.
I turned out okay.
Your character was like,
and once again, luck didn't fail you.
well, I liked all the characters. Your character though, like you start off as this like brutal killer, and we're like, I was like, okay, what is this going to be? And then you were like, then it became so human.
Yeah, it's and that if you don't know where to go, it doesn't hurt to start with a trope, but then start digging
and
under
that's what happened.
and see what happens. Like that's just the surface, and that's just what's on the cover of the book. But what's going on in there, right? How is this clock ticking? And I really liked seeing all those wires get exposed.
And in your case, you played almost against type, because you're usually a very outgoing, flamboyant. You're the up super energy characters a lot of times.
Yeah.
And you had to play the reserve,
It's tough when you're in an audio podcast playing a character who doesn't talk a lot, and so I tended to break character a little bit more often just to let you all into my thinking, so that you could
of
be a
course.
part of that. But just starting with, I didn't know what to say when Stanhope called me. I went sure, and then I just like, all right, well that's just what he says to everything.
Yeah.
And every time he says sure, it's like I am Groot, and it's kind of this. It takes on a different meaning each time, and that might be the last thing he said just before he went under the mud. It was just like.
Sure.
And that was just this acceptance, right? And it's just kind of fun little narrative challenge.
Yeah.
So how about the two of you? How did you enjoy our little playtest
I loved it.
here?
I loved it. It was nice. I liked how we went on our historical tangents, because that's what we want. Like the last game we put out, Zany Zoo, the character creation is literally about doing research on the internet. Like, and we want that. We want people to be like reading about the First World War while they're playing.
Open up the archives and
Open up
find
the
this member of
archives,
your
or be
family.
like, okay, like this is my gun. Let me look it up.
And that plays into the educational role of the game.
100%. I like those tangents. I like seeing the characters evolve. I like I actually really liked how you were like, yeah, I'm going to die. This is it. And you made it a part of the role play.
Yeah.
Right. I really liked that. I really liked how even though you accepted it, everybody at the table was like, okay, well, this is how we could have saved you.
Yeah.
And then
and
you
if
were
we
like,
did another hour, I think it probably like we still had I was like, oh, I forgot. I actually forgot about the dog.
We lost the dog.
And there I am as I just go into the mud. All of a sudden, there's just scratch,
too.
and he grabs my identity disc and pulls me back out of the mud. And I'm like, now long ago in another age when I played D&D 3.5, I played a character whose character the character died, and everyone else then went on this whole mission to like get the gems and crystals or whatever to resurrect me. By the time we went through that and brought me back, like an actual year had passed.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to play him anymore. But here I was thrust back at this character's back on the table. I was just like, he doesn't like any of you. He just spent a year in the Elysian fields and you pulled him back into this crap. He quits.
Yeah.
Right. And I wonder like what's Al's story going to be dealing with? He was ready.
yeah.
And he was done, and he'd done his duty, and he had died, and that was noble and glorious, and and it was of all the ways to go, peaceful.
Yeah. In a place where he wanted to be.
And then to be pulled out of that and brought right back into it for another eternity, like. That's a whole different playbook almost happening.
Yeah.
Like
You'd be the Scarred.
Like
You'd be
I'm
the
not the
Scarred.
Scout anymore. I just advance into the Scarred, and I just play that playbook instead.
Yeah.
And play a whole different arc. And I love that Powered by Apocalypse games kind of allow that, and that these aren't classes. Each playbook is a story that you're going to tell, and your character could shift between playbooks over time as that story changes if you're doing a long form.
Yeah.
And one character like Ben, you could fit into the sergeant, you could fit into the replacement, you could fit into the scrounger, right?
Yeah.
But what story do you, the player, want to tell with the concept you have in mind?
Yeah. And I like, I really enjoyed it because like there were so many points when it could have been like, okay, that's the end of our session. And that's a 1 session thing.
Yeah.
But after this, so like we have like around 3 hours of gameplay, right? That's one session, like a con session. After this though, we could have played multiple 3-hour sessions after this with the exact same characters.
Yeah. Or you can take Alex, your character, and take him into a different game with a different section as we get broken up after this whole cart martial thing, and we're still but we're all out there, and then after you've played for a while, and then you meet up with Al like 4 months later.
And Al's the Scarred.
Al's the Scarred.
Right.
I'm the same. And the Meat Grinders has taken on a different meaning in that it's not that we're grinding up them. It's everybody that serves with me gets ground up.
And one thing something I enjoy too, there's so like I did notice the only thing in front of you, Daniel, was laptop for internet searches and your own notes. At the GM, you don't have those moves and things. There's no screen. There's no cards up your sleeve. You're just watching us and reacting to us and following our moves. You never even roll dice. If I died, I could be the GM and you pick up a playbook.
Yep.
And the rules are like, because the rules are all on the player's side for players who are like, I don't want to GM a game. Well, honestly, it's harder to be a player in this game in terms of the responsibilities of following the rules. So the GM is just an adjudicator and painting and throwing a couple challenges your way. But really, those challenges are all reflective of the bonds and the stories that you have presented, right? So, all right, if Stanhope is an important character, you're going to throw him in and create some drama and have Stanhope really test the nature of that friendship and then see where that goes. And if that doesn't ring any bells, then bring in Red. If that doesn't ring any bells, and let's have some more letters coming in from your sister and dealing with the death of the brother-in-law. And it's something I saw first when we were playing Night Witches, which deals with a lot of like your characters are going to die quick and often. When that happens, let that dead player become the next GM. Mm-hmm. Then the GM comes in, plays, and then as players die, the GM role can rotate around the table, and that allows also to keep things fresh and new ideas and new challenges.
It's like, hey, we'll be in charge of this battle, and then you'll do
and
this
time
battle.
can pass, and you just go, okay, well, a month is later, and you're in a new area.
Have a new playbook.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm glad you two really enjoyed it. Like I had a lot of fun GMing it.
I had a ton of fun playing that character.
Yeah. That was a good character.
What advice would you might have? Because as we mentioned, it is outside the norm for a game to be rooted in reality, especially a period and signaled around real people, real locations, real historical events. For a GM who's feeling, oh, I don't want to play this because I feel like it's not going to do it justice, or it's not going to be respectful, or I'm just nervous about doing something that's based in the real world versus something with magic or science fiction or time travel and dinosaurs. Like there's a comfort in doing the imaginary. What advice might you have, as now having played 1,000 of these games, of doing a period piece RPG and approaching that subject in a way that doesn't also, like, you don't want to turn Ross Rifles into a mockery of where things are going. This is not a comedy game, and there does need to come at it from a certain point of respect for its source. What do you think of if you had a GM coming to you going like, I don't want to do this because it's real?
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, there were points when we were playing, there were so many points we were just laughing.
Yeah.
We were just laughing. And you're going to hit those like comedic highs. You're going to hit those dramatic highs. But I think with Ross Rifles, though, the one thing that we emphasize is that you aren't changing history.
Yeah.
And so people are always sort of like, well, I don't know much about this battle, right? We really didn't interact with the Battle of Passchendaele.
No, it was a very, very small, insignificant point in that line.
And that's what makes it possible for people to play this game without knowing too much, right? The only thing you have to understand and respect is that these are human beings.
Yeah.
Right. And that these people,
even if Ben didn't respect that they were human beings,
but his character though had that
was
background
starting to come to it
and was coming to it. Right. But so you don't have to really know history to do it. You just have to be respectful of people who made sacrifices. And I think anybody can do that.
And Pat, like, we know, like, sort of why you approaching Ross Rifles and now, like, the development of the game. And how's it been like for you? I've heard a lot of Daniel's perspective. How's it been like for you developing this game and learning about this run and some of the reactions you've had from other people you've played with? And
I've certainly enjoyed it, but I think over the course of sort of the reasons why we started to develop this game and over the course of its development, I've discovered that I think Ross Rifles is actually a very powerful tool for remembrance. Specifically, because it's about the First World War. And when you're actually engaging with this material, you are bringing a sort of a level of connection to the First World War that you don't get from reading, or you don't get from, just learning about it in a classroom, right? You are actually interacting with the experiences that people in the First World War had. And so I've learned that it's actually a very powerful tool for that, to understand what happened. And I think that's why we wanted to bring Ross Rifles into the world, right?
I was about to ask, being passionate about this topic, you've already answered it. Why tabletop role-playing games versus any other medium, right? Yeah. Versus a textbook or a YouTube series or a documentary or anything. Why, or even a board game, tabletop role-playing games, I think you just answered that, is they're these empathy engines. Yeah. It allows you this one-on-one connection to a character that you have invented, but to a place and time that happened. And for just 2.5, 3 hours, you're there and you can empathize with the struggles and the fears and the stress and the hopes and all the challenges that went with being there. And I would have loved to have played even just for one more hour to get that, because it sounded like that next hour, that third hour, was really going to be very much more role play as we deal with your arrest and deal with my near-death experience and deal with Ben being this hero who's like, you're just lucky every time, and everyone around you is dying because of your choices, but you just keep being praised. To tell the story. You keep being praised for it, and you're not, though. Not if we're actually looking at the numbers. and yet it was just really interesting turn on that arc, and I think that next hour would have been maybe no dice rolls. It would have probably been no dice rolls. It would have just been us moving around the trenches and the camp to dealing with each other and the people and the fallout of the previous night's mission. Yeah. And I think this is one of the things I was at least trying to steer us in, is that somebody who plays more like trad games like D&D, this is kind of like that midpoint between the narrative heavy PBTA games and the more tactical like 3.5s. Yeah. If you don't know what to do, go and fight something for a while and figure it out. And whereas I have certainly played PBTA games that are so story heavy that you're playing Monster Hearts and you're looking at your move sheet going, I don't know what to do, and none of these, and it's like, well, just talk to me.
Yeah, we were looking at each other talking rather than at our sheets. And I mean,
it was only when I was like having to rescue you, going like, okay,
what
all right, I gotta rescue you now. What can I do here? As I'm trying to strategize in advance. Okay, it looks like Out of the Night. I could do that, but I didn't go there until there was a real crisis that I need to resolve this, and I don't know if I'm going to charge or if I'm going to ask around for help.
Hello.
I need an adult.
And then you charged, and then you lost your gun. And
the feeling in my left side.
The things just went south real bad. But we wanted to be able to, from like a business perspective, meet the largest number and most diverse group of players we possibly could. But also, since it was an educational game, we wanted to reach as big of an audience as possible.
Yeah, and it's nice to see how accessible it is, that the barriers of entry into this game are very low. Even as you mentioned, Dungeon World it's crunchier. There's more demands on the player if they're entering in it, that if they have never played Dungeons and Dragons and they have never played a Powered by the Apocalypse game, it's asking a lot for you to now pick up on kind of both of those styles quite quickly. Where this is really just, it's just asking you, what story would you like to tell and how are you connected to these other players? And then the rest we'll figure it out and it'll reveal itself. And it's quite, I'm coming at it from someone who's played a lot of Powered by Apocalypse, but Alex, this was your very first Power. Was it intimidating?
No, not at all.
No,
it's hard to say.
Alex, everybody.
No, it was all.
You ask a yes or no question, you get a yes or no answer. That was interview 101. That was on me. How intimidating did you feel this game was?
Little, very little at all. It's all going to depend on how into building your lore and story you are. And if you're interested and want to go forward with it, you're going to have a great time. If you're somebody who really doesn't want, I don't want to think for myself. Well, this is. It's
a collaborative story. If you don't want to tell a collaborative story,
exactly,
go play a board game.
Exactly,
because this is like, that's one of those buy-ins where it's like going to an improv night and want to just sit at the side of the wall and not participate. Okay, well then you're not.
Exactly.
You're just here for different reasons.
If you're playing, you've signed
Mario Kart next door. You can go play it over there.
If you're playing, you've signed up to play, and if you're coming to this. It helps because we were collaborating back and forth on things and filling in the blanks of each other's stories.
Together, right? Like if I really don't know what Al Rice is going to do, I don't know what Al Rice is going to do, and he's just kind of sitting there going like he just doesn't belong here.
Yeah,
and you can just you can bide your time and just ask, like, because you're going to find in more Powered by Apocalypse games, the GM is just going to follow up almost every description with "What do you do?"
Yeah,
and that's the most common thing they're going to say is "What do you do?" Where in D&D it's probably roll for initiative. What do you do? And then you don't have to look at the moves or what dice you're going to roll. Just go, I'm in my bunk and I'm drinking. Or I'm looking for some cheese, or I'm hungry and we're going on a mission tonight and this might be the last meal we have, so I'm gonna find a turkey. And and there's no turkeys out here in the front, but I'm gonna find it, and maybe you're gonna find a can of turkey, and that's just gonna be a feast. And you want to make sure you have that, and maybe that's just gonna be our mission that day.
Yeah, and it can be. We've certainly had those games where it's like that.
Yeah, especially if you got someone like the Scrounger who's just like, I'm putting a meal together for everyone.
Yeah, we're gonna have Thanksgiving in the trenches.
Yeah,
and it's like
that's your game.
So we're having Cornish hens. Well, these are sparrows, and it's like
they're not sparrows. They're messenger pigeons.
They're messenger pigeons, and they are Cornish hens tonight.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's your game. You have something like nice and lighthearted.
Until the superior officer finds out you've been eating the messenger pigeons.
Yes. That's why his letters aren't going home.
And why the reinforcements didn't arrive that night. And why the artillery didn't get the updated coordinates and are now shelling friendly troops.
Yep. Roll for initiative. Yeah.
Fuck. Ross Rifles is still in Kickstarter. The description is in the link in the episode description. Words are difficult, but you can find it there. Just click on descriptions to the Kickstarter page and follow along with this campaign. Follow along with the stretch goals. Find out what tier you want to be involved in and get involved in helping to make this game a reality, because it's really cool. And of the games I've played this year too, I find Ross Rifles, it's telling a story that doesn't get told, and it's I think it's as an education tool and as a game mechanic and as this opportunity that you have to bring to your table. I don't throw important around a whole lot, but I do think games like this that are telling stories and trying to highlight these other bits fall into that category. And so Pat and Daniel, thank you for making Ross Rifles. This is a really fun experience, and I can't wait to see what the full package is going to look like when it comes out. Because I know you say it's already ready, so it's got to get printed, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that copy.
A couple of things we have to finish writing and some tweaks, but it's otherwise, we're pretty well along.
Mm-hmm.
So where can we follow up with both of you and with Dundas West Games?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Daniel H. Kwan, also danielhkwan.com. Dundas West Games is dundaswestgames.com, at Dundas West Games on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, you can email me at danielk@dundaswestgames.com.
And subscribe to the Asians Represent podcast.
Yeah, that too.
Of which he's a co-host on, and it's a lot of fun. And you've got the D&D game that you're running over there. Which is it's a whole wonderful thing.
Which will turn into a Dundas West Games project.
Heck yes. So that's also there. And Pat?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Keenan_Patrick. And if you have an email to send me about Ross Rifles, you can email me at patrick@dundaswestgames.com.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining me around here at the table. Congratulations on your Kickstarter, I'm going to say, because we're 2.5 weeks into it now.
Yeah. Thank you.
It was great. And this game is awesome. So we'll bring it back. I'm going to revisit this this time next year to come back to it, because I understand too, like when we do these Kickstarter games, these are the quick start guides. These are the games as they are, and it's like playing early access, right? So I'd like to come back and see where it is and how it's been. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining me, my dear listener. We will be back next week with a whole nother game, and we'll be announcing that on Twitter at Dice Warriors. So go make sure you're following us there. For now, I bid you adieu. Thank you for playing these games. Thank you for making your tables accessible and open to new players and new stories. And thank you for being terrible warriors. Until next time, be good to each other. Bye.
Bye-bye.